Well, I guess the good news right off the top is, as someone who's known for maybe going on a rant and maybe taking a little too long at the mic, there's no chance I'm ever going to approach what a congressman just did, talking for 25-plus hours straight and supposedly not using the restroom while holding the floor. I'm calling fishy on that. We'll get into that a little bit later, and maybe the whole torpedo bats as we interrupt this nonstop coverage of mock drafts this time of year to welcome Darren Urban back to the AZ. Dani, Sureck, you both left me behind for Indianapolis, but then Darren left both of us behind for Florida. So you okay with that?
Look, my mic wasn't on. Apologies to any of our listeners who may be residing in Florida, but no, I do not feel like I missed out on anything by Darren being in the state of Florida. Okay. So right. Fine by me. Turns
out Darren packed an extra bag home from Florida, and it contained Calais Campbell. Well done. Did you go on a recruiting mission? Was that a covert recruiting mission?
No, it was not, but obviously that turned out pretty well for the Cardinals, don't you think?
Yes,
I mean,
did.
And I know you guys just talked about this for a good amount of time on Cover 2 yesterday, but
I haven't stopped smiling since the press release came out.
I mean, obviously, Paul, you and I, you have a really close relationship with Calais because of all those years with the Big Red Rage. I like to think that I'm pretty tight with Calais myself, and the idea of bringing in a guy who not only can still play, even though he's going to turn 39 before the regular season starts, but what he brings to the locker room, the kind of person he is, the kind of leadership he's going to give. I mean, it really people are talking about how it's a no-brainer for $5.5 million. I really see absolutely no downside to this whatsoever, and only upside. I made a mention in my blog that if you look at the numbers he put up last year, there would be players 15 years younger than him that would love to have a season like that if they were a defensive lineman.
If Calais Campbell had been a Cardinal last year, he would have been tied for most sacks by a player with 5. So the fact that he has been putting up the numbers he has so late in his career at 38, there is no downside to this. I mean, Campbell has been reliable and consistent. The fact that he has started 17 games in each of the last 2 years is incredibly impressive. And for a Cardinals defensive line room that was bit pretty hard by the injury bug last year, this is a huge addition.
I mean, if you put a thought bubble over my head, Week 8 at Miami last year, it was late in that game, and Calais was balling out, and the trade deadline was fast approaching. Yeah. During one of the commercial breaks, we're chopping it up. Hey, what are the odds 93 is available if the Dolphins are out of the playoff race? And it turns out a little bit later, according to reports, Cardinals were one of several teams who kicked the tires, who inquired about Calais Campbell.
Look, this is a player who left such an imprint on this fan base that, when he first left, people were upset.
Yep.
When he got traded from Jacksonville to Baltimore for a 5th-round pick, people were saying, why wouldn't the Cardinals send a 5th-round pick to go get him back?
And by the way, when he went to Jacksonville, he got then a record for the position, $15 million a year. Cardinals went to like 12. Because remember, there was the behind-the-scenes video, the negotiations his agent put out when he was at home and the whole thing. And Cardinals went down to the wire, but Jacksonville reset the entire market to sign him away.
And again, the Cardinals wanted to keep him. They weren't going to give him a record amount of money. And I love Calais, but if you thought he was going to have another 8-9 years in his career, come on. I mean,
he played, as our Jim Omondro reminded us, he played in the Super Bowl for the Cardinals. He was a rookie in the 2008 season. There are just so many different mind blows. He's 11 years older than his D-line coach right now.
He played more special team snaps last year than he has in his whole career.
Really?
It was only by 1 or 2, but yeah, he had 170 special team snaps last year, in addition to playing 58% of the defensive snaps.
Because that was our first impression of Calais was his rookie year. You're like, look at this 6'8" guy covering a kick. I mean, it was remarkable. He was on most of the special teams.
Well, you love having a guy like that potentially blocking kicks.
Yeah. Well, you know what? He's 3rd all time since the merger in block kicks.
All I know is he's back in the locker room to talk to.
That's right.
And that's what I love.
Okay, so Dani and I kicked that around on Cardinals Cover 2, where really it was addition by subtraction, no Craig Grillo. And we talked about how the second half of the season, or at least after the bye, remember Jonathan Gannon late in the year, maybe it was even his post-regular season press conference, where he's asked about the 2-5 record coming out of the bye. And he admitted, we have to examine that. We have to drill deep into that, see if there's some sort of cause and effect. Look, this team is already loaded at D-line. So to your point about leadership, Dani, do you think this ties directly into whatever assessment the Cardinals made? What exactly happened going 2-5 out of the bye, and is Calais Campbell insurance against that repeating itself?
100%. Bringing in that type of leader. This is a very young locker room, and there are a lot of pros to having a young locker room, especially with the trajectory that the Cardinals have been on up until this point, kind of turning things around the last 2 years under Monty Ossenfort and Gannon. Leadership still makes such a difference, and I think that's something when you're looking at what can we add so that we don't have that same sort of downfall the second half of the season again. And leadership is something that the Cardinals now have a significant amount more of in just one player in Campbell than they did last year. That's a type of player who is, it's important, yes, to be someone to lead by example. Sometimes you need someone to lead with their voice, and you need someone who's going to walk around on the bench and make sure that people are still in it, and make sure that even if you're playing from behind, you're not having the mindset that you are out of it. And that if something like energy or focus is off, coaches can only do or say so much. It holds so much weight when it comes from a player. So to bring in Campbell really adds something that I think this locker room was missing last year.
I'm happy then if they need a voice. They picked the right one, right? You're not going to miss that voice.
What he has left of his voice. He always does that roar, and he's permanently blown out his voice. But, pull the curtain back a little bit. So he left in 2016. I vividly remember our video crew 2017 didn't know what to do with themselves pregame because Calais was no longer there to deliver the on-field pregame pep talk where everyone, it was like him, and he's like the Pied Piper. Everyone got around the 6'8" guy, and he delivered the pregame speech. And there was definitely a void when he left there for a while. So when we talk about building from the inside out, you do that on the field, in the trenches, O-line, D-line build out. But then how about building from the inside out in your locker room with the leadership? And you bring in a guy, no longer is Kelvin Beachum going to have to endure all the old guy jokes because, guess what? There's Calais Campbell. He's going to be 39 this season. And maybe, just maybe, he can even be helpful with some of the more veteran guys, even like a Kyler Murray in some regards, right? All the pressure that comes with being a franchise quarterback. And I wouldn't be shocked, Darren, based on Calais Campbell walking across that locker room and having a conversation here or there with K1.
Here's kind of how I look at this is, and I know fans, this is a very, this is a word wrought or phrase wrought with peril in terms of using it. But it feels a little all-in, that kind of all-in kind of feel. Now, the way Monty Ossenfort is going to approach all-in is different than maybe Steve Keim would have done it. And you're not going to go willy-nilly. I know talking to Monty Ossenfort, I got a chance to chat with him at the owners' meetings and, again, brought up, they still have a significant amount of cap space. Even after the Campbell thing, they have a significant amount of cap space. And he talked about, you want to add stuff, but he's never going to it was never about I'm going to get all this cap space and then use it all. It's always going to be like I'm going to be smart about these deals.
Because if Monty needs a list, I'll give him a list.
No, I'm sure.
Number 2 receiver, starting guard. You want me to keep going? I'll give him a list.
But he, if you look at a lot of these deals, you look at even the Josh Sweat deal, the Tomlinson deal, all these things, there's a lot of flexibility within the next year or two to move on or do other things so that they can. But back to the original point in terms of all in, I think of having him, making sure James Conner's still around, making sure Budda Baker is still around. You need good players on the field. That is the number one thing. If they can't play well, the rest of it's stupid. But if you can get players that play well that are veterans that have that kind of gravitas, a Conner, a Baker, a Calais, a Tomlinson, a Josh Sweat who's been on a really good 2-time Super Bowl winning team for 7 years or whatever he's been with, like that helps a quarterback to me in that locker room. Now, the quarterback's still got to play. If we're going to talk about the quarterback is the one who's got to really elevate his game to me and get them to where they want to go. But it's all being set up. If we want to talk about the last couple of years of it's it's tough to have Kyler succeed when he doesn't have the pieces around him. Well, he's got a lot of pieces now.
Just because you bring in a veteran doesn't mean they're going to bring in production or leadership. The two don't always necessarily go hand in hand. The veterans that the Cardinals have brought in Tomlinson, Sweat, Campbell, even going back a few years in free agency prior, that they have been very intentional. That if you're coming in as a veteran, they're bringing in someone who has proven that they can do the job out on the field. Because sometimes if you've been in the league for 5-6 years doesn't necessarily mean that you've made a significant impact on any of those teams.
And look at last year, even the number 4 pick overall, right? It was inconsistent what you got out of Marvin Harrison Jr. Gas bags like yours truly is over here. Oh, yeah, pencil him in for a Jamar Chase, all-pro rookie season. Justin Jefferson, all-pro rookie season. No, that's not an absolute. And
should I go back to where I said a couple times he might not even get 1,000 yards?
Okay. Darren's waiting. Darren's been waiting a long time, several months, for me to say the following. Darren was right. He was correct to pump the brakes on all the Marvin Harrison Jr. projections.
That's enough boosting.
I purposely paused before and after so you guys can surgically remove that and put it into a loop.
I do like the all-in thought because the Cardinals are striking while the iron is hot. They doubled their win total. They were competitive within the division. You look around the division and every other team has question marks. The Rams are continuing to get older. They decided to keep Matthew Stafford. How are those new pieces going to pan out for them, with the exception of having a younger defense? Seattle's got question marks all over the place with the offseason they've had. And San Francisco's window has closed, in my opinion, of the Super Bowl runs that they have had and the departures that they have started to see and what they're having to do financially. This is the time for the Cardinals. To me, this is the Cardinals' division to lose. Whoa. They are the most consistent team. They are ascending. They have a significant amount of retention from players and coaches. And when you look at the moves that have been made in the offseason, all they have done is bring in proven players specifically in position rooms that needed help.
I'm curious now.
It's a pretty bold statement.
No, it is.
It is.
What do you guys maybe not disagree?
Well,
no, look, a lot can change in the offseason. I understand that. So I'm not saying this to be clipped in like November and be like, Dani doesn't know anything. But how would you
still might do that.
How would you feel differently based on what is going around the NFC West right now?
I guess for me, I'm curious to know how the Rams, now that they kept Matthew Stafford and that they got Davante Adams, and they've been doing it.
Is Davante Adams still Davante Adams?
I don't know.
Right? That's not a guarantee.
I will say
for
this.
me.
I do think Davante Adams at this point in his career is better than Cooper Kupp.
Considering the way Sean McVay courted Davante Adams, he's definitely all in. He's bullish on what he does.
I will say
that Rams offense.
I tend to agree about the 49ers stuff. The Brock Purdy stuff is getting more and more interesting as the day goes by. I'm trying to figure out who's being more goofy about this, the 49ers with Purdy or the Cowboys with Parsons.
Why'd you look at me?
I don't know.
Here's the thing.
I mean, the answer is the Cowboys with Parsons, but that's because I just wanted to throw it out there.
Nobody enjoys from afar the demise of the last place 49ers like yours truly, but they do have premier players at premier positions. If Brock Purdy is back, he's been good enough, proven enough to get them through the playoffs and in through the postseason. Christian McCaffrey back at running back. You got Trent
healthy.
Williams at left tackle.
If he's healthy.
Nick Bosa, your edge rusher.
If he's healthy.
I understand this is the
Fred
time
Warner,
of year where
the best Mike backer
we
in the game.
assume everyone's healthy and it's all golden. But just based off what we saw from those teams last year compared to now, look, we've talked about the 2-5 post bye, so I understand the fall off with the Cardinals. I just think when you're looking big picture, I think that the Cardinals have had one of the better off seasons in the division, and they have retained a lot of their key players while bringing in proven talent.
I will say this. If you're the rest of the NFC West and you're looking over the block wall into the Cardinals' backyard and into that D-line room, I mean, what was the show on HGTV? Extreme Makeover?
Move that bus!
D-line edition. I mean,
they could move a bus. That would be fun to watch them do.
I mean, you ended last year with some guys who didn't make your final 53 in August, basically filling out the D-line depth chart at the end of last year. And now look how you're beginning this year on paper, at least, right? I mean, Justin Jones, Bilal Nichols are back. Darius Robinson, your first rounder, going to be healthy. And then you re-sign L.J. Collier. You added Dalvin Tomlinson. Here comes Calais Campbell. Dante Stills ascending each and every year. Think of what a Calais Campbell could be with a Dante Stills, not just a Darius Robinson, but a Dante Stills as well. And so, I mean, you're loaded like Darren's dinner plate at the owners' meetings, or the breakfast plate at the owners' meetings when he's sitting next to Jonathan Gannon.
So here's my question, Paul.
Sand between his toes.
I didn't see any water whatsoever, other than some rain. There was some rain in the horrible humidity of Florida. What happens now in this? All we were talking about at the Combine was how deep this draft was at defensive line.
Doesn't change a whole lot, Darren.
I mean, I made the joke the other day with Grillo. I'm like, okay, Cardinals are, this is before Calais Campbell. Cardinals are still drafting D-line in round 1 or round 2, right? You don't walk into a barbecue joint and order the avocado toast. I mean, this draft is deep in defensive line. So
that was such a San Francisco saying.
It's confounding, is it not? If this draft is so deep in D-line, the Cardinals went out and signed Calais and Dalvin Tomlinson and re-upped L.J. Collier.
Not necessarily. Yeah. When you look at the contracts, a lot of players in the defensive line
4 or 5 of those guys could be gone next year.
Because, yes, a lot of them have contracts through the 2026 season. They don't have guaranteed money. So you're going to come into a situation where a player might want something restructured, or they're going to cut a player. So you're still going to want depth. And if this is the year where you can get a game wrecker on the defensive line for the long term, why would you not want to take advantage of that?
I still think there's going to be a defensive lineman taken in the first, I'm going to say the first 3 rounds. But I'm at this point, if there's an offensive lineman that makes sense at 16, I would be stunned if it's not offensive.
The door is much more open for a position other than defensive tackle. It is still a high possibility.
Again, talking to Monty at the owners' meetings, and I know he's going to say this. He's going to say this a lot of the time, but he really feels like there's a lot wide open with that first pick because of what they did in the offseason. And I'm a lot more, I still think it's going to be somebody in the trenches of some sort. Maybe an edge guy, maybe an offensive lineman. But if the right cornerback is there, I don't think it'll be a wide receiver. I really don't. But
why not? We've talked about a speedy receiver.
We have talked about a speedy receiver, but then I talked to Monty and JG about speedy receivers, and I did not get the sense that they're craving a speed receiver.
They're not listening to Cardinals Underground and taking.
Oh, they're listening to us, and then they're just giving us. They're just shaking their heads like these people.
Because we've gone way too long without mentioning a mock draft. The latest on NFL.com, Eric Edholm, I guess he's one of the editors, right? He's been doing this a long time. 2.0, number 16 overall, Arizona Cardinals select Jahdae Barron out of Texas, the Jim Thorpe Award winner as the top DB in the land, first-team All-American. Here's the thing. The scouting report calls him a big, physical, athletic nickel. So I don't really see that sort of corner coming to the Cardinals when you have Garrett Williams.
No.
So,
but again,
I'm going back to Will Johnson out of Michigan if you're going corner at 16.
Again, I sometimes I look at these scouting reports and I think to myself, well, I don't know if they know what they're talking about.
Says here he also has potential to cross-train as a safety. So we know Nick Rawlis and Jonathan Gannon, their affinity for versatility.
Yep.
Are you
talking about Barron now?
Are we talking
I'm talking about Barron, but I'm also getting to the big question. Did you or did you not ask Monty Ossenfort about the elephant in the safety room, Jalen Thompson?
I did not ask, but I'm going to state on the record right now, I would be stunned if he wasn't on this roster.
Okay.
Paul, are you itching for another hybrid player? Is that what I'm taking from this?
Because the Isaiah Simmons went so well?
Well, I mean, and again, the Jalen Thompson thing, it's one thing talking about 2025. It's another thing talking about 2026. He's going to be a free agent after this year. Now that they've re-signed Buddha and they have Rabbit, do you start playing
GMs work a year ahead. We all know that. It's
so you could have Jalen Thompson and then not have Jalen Thompson.
There are just certain things I'm not buying in this draft. I mean, I still want to see what the Cardinals, okay, are the Cardinals really – there's no way Cardinals go on receiver, right? The other thing I'm not buying, Ashton Genty going like top 5. I'm just not seeing the Spud State running back going top 5 in some of these drafts. Most of them have him top 10. I'm still not quite buying that. And then the tight end, Tyler Warren, right? I mean, out of Penn State, going like number 5 overall to Jacksonville. Really? You're going to go with a tight end? Haven't teams learned that a tight end in the top 5 is just asking to be a brutal mistake? Haven't they? So
I don't know.
I'm not sure I'm buying that.
If you could get it would. Well, I guess it would depend on who. I mean, is Trey McBride, if you knew he was going to be what he is now, is he a top 10 type of pick in the draft?
It's a good question. Yeah,
that's why I asked it, Paul.
Look, in terms of what he can do, yes, but in terms of where you can get tight ends, no. Meaning you have to know the value of different position groups on the board, and so most of the time they're not valued that high.
Darren, when you were down in Florida, over under 20 times, how many times did you hear the word tush?
There were quite a few tushes.
More than 20.
Spoken. Probably, yeah. There had to have been.
So what's the 411 on the tush push for those who might not be aware what was brought up at the owners' meetings?
I'm glad we're getting to this because I was feeling way
you want
too
to talk
weird.
about
I feel
tushes?
very serious. This podcast got very serious this week.
Oh, and we're not talking about Mike Tyson.
No.
Well, you're hanging out with the decision makers, so
That's
this
true.
is a serious edition.
The tush push has been tabled. Half the teams want to get rid of it. Half the teams don't. You have to get 3/4 of a team to change a rule. What I find most fascinating about the whole tush push thing is Rich McKay, who is the co-chair of the competition committee and also the president of the Atlanta Falcons. He basically said, we do not like having discussions about rules that are basically trying to change something that one team or two teams do really well. And the bottom line is, while all teams have probably run it in some way, shape, or form, there's only two teams that did it more than 5 times last year, and it was the Eagles and the Bills. And it does feel like kind of punitive in that regard. Now,
and the team that does it best has a quarterback that squats 600 pounds. Funny how that works.
Now, I'm going to sit here and say that I don't particularly like it, and I didn't realize until everybody started doing it that – see, I thought it was illegal to push a player and to pull a player, and it had been up until 2004. And then they decided, for whatever reason, I don't know how that became a thing, they felt like officials were struggling down the field when offensive linemen were flying down a block, and whether they were actually blocking or pushing a player was too hard for officials to discern. So they just took the rule out, and then everybody kind of ignored it up until the tush push showed up. But I personally don't like it. I don't think any player should be able to be pushed or pulled. Trey McBride going in for that touchdown against the Ravens, I thought that was kind of a joke touchdown, to be honest, back in, what was that, 2023?
3?
I think it was 3. I think it was after Kyler came back, where he caught it at like the 7, and then I don't know why the whistle didn't blow, and then 42 people were all in a big slob when they walked into the end zone.
So is Calais Campbell maybe your secret antidote against the tush push? Is he a guy in there that
antidote? He's my quarterback on 4th and 1 now, baby.
That's true.
I'm gonna put Darius Robinson and Justin Jones behind Calais Campbell, and good freaking luck.
It wouldn't be the first time that Calais has had the ball in his hands in an NFL game. Let's go into the cold tub time machine. Okay. You ready for this? Because a lot of us, yours truly included, thought the last home game ever played by Calais Campbell in an Arizona Cardinals uniform was December 18th of 2016 against New Orleans, when this happened.
On 2nd and 20, a pass play for Breeze in trouble, fumbles the ball, and it's caught out of the air by Campbell, and he's running free at the 30, at the 20. He'll take it all the way and into the end zone for the Cardinal touchdown. It might be Calais Campbell's final home game, and if that's the case, what a way to go out. A fumble recovery for a touchdown.
Have you ever seen a tree run? Like one of J.R.R. Tolkien's Ents attacking Isengard. Calais Campbell caught the ball out of the air and took it to the house.
You're out there, you play hard, and good things happen. I got to take my hat off to Marcus Golden. He made a big time play. I've had a lot of fun playing in the stadium. Just hanging with the Bird Gang, the energy. I fed off of it for 9 years. And it's been quite the pleasure.
I'm trying to figure out, Paul, if Omo is trying to make everybody feel more and more bad that Wolf is retiring as he plays his greatest hits of stuff like that, knowing we're not going to have it.
Yeah, that's an all-time Wolfleyism right there. There's no doubt. People don't believe me. What he's reading on the team plane, if it isn't like 14th century stuff, that's the kind of stuff he's reading, and then boom, he works it into the broadcast.
My question now is, when we're going to have a soon-to-be 39-year-old player, is he going to come in to get cultured with us when Dani does getting cultured?
Wow. Is that a segue?
I think it could be.
Okay. Dani, we'll segue to you.
Getting cultured with Dani. It is not just directed at Paul.
Am I the default uncultured Philistine around here?
Yes.
You got me very excited now.
I am on social media and consume more pop culture than both of you combined.
I think I'm being unfairly profiled, but go ahead.
Let's go. You cleaning out your ears with that Sharpie in your ear, Paul?
By the way, Calais Campbell, that post-game interview that was in the locker room afterwards, 6'8", he uses me as a bar stool, and he likes to sweat all over me. So that's the one aspect I'm not quite looking forward to in his return.
How much sweat have you absorbed from players over the years, Paul?
Dani, take it away.
Okay, with pleasure. We're going to keep this one a little shorter. They are actually under the same umbrella. You guys Beliebers?
I never have been, to be honest, no.
Beliebers, Justin Bieber fans?
That's a hard no.
Okay, well, sad news.
He's had a hard life.
Sad news, if you are a Belieber, he's kind of been crashing out on social media. So it
Never
has
a good place to crash out.
Yeah, it has to do with Selena Gomez, a singer who recently got engaged to Benny Blanco, who is a music producer. Selena and Justin dated off and on from 2011 to roughly 2018. Okay, they were like, if you were growing up like around my age at that time, they were like the it teenage couple. Okay, peaks of their career. 6 months after Selena Gomez and Justin Bieber broke up, Justin Bieber was married to Hailey Baldwin, now Hailey Bieber at the time. So like a 7-year relationship, and then within 6 months they got married. Okay.
Probably not smart.
Now that Selena has recently gotten engaged, Justin is posting all kinds of cryptic messages on his social media. He's posting erratically on Instagram, essentially mocking women who post a lot about getting engaged, all kinds of things, while he has a wife and a child at home. Weird stuff going on.
So a Charlie Sheen type meltdown. Is that what we're
not great.
Okay.
Not great.
We're not to winning behavior yet.
Moving on to Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell, ? Two actors who were in
Right down
Anyone
your alley,
But
Paul.
You.
I know Glenn Powell from Top Gun Maverick.
There you go.
Boom!
They were in the movie Anyone But You. It was a rom-com. It was very cute. It gave off like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Day vibes, if you get the reference, which you probably don't, hence the point of this entire segment. So Sydney Sweeney recently ended a roughly 3-year engagement, and shortly after was seen at Glenn's sister's wedding, sparking dating rumors between the two former co-workers. They would make a pretty attractive couple. And that's it. You've now been cultured. You're welcome.
Okay. That's salacious. That was a salacious addition right there. Okay.
That was. We didn't even mention Selena Gomez being in Only Murders on the Building.
Oh, I love that show.
Okay. Nothing from the nightlife in Florida, Darren? You're not going to chime in with anything?
It was a very quick in and out kind of thing. I got in Sunday night. There was the NFL reception Monday night, and I was traveling all day Tuesday afternoon. So, no, there was no nightlife.
What other takeaways?
I was getting up at 3:30 in the morning, Arizona time, for like 3 days in a row.
Okay.
Isn't that enough?
Okay. All right. So what other takeaways from talking to Monty, JG? I know BMI came up. I have no idea why. There's a little bit of everything.
I thought it was interesting. You talk about the BMI, that's body mass index. Somebody decided to go. So at the owners' meetings, there's a Monday morning early, like 7:45, the AFC coaches talk, and then Tuesday morning the NFC coaches talk. And when Jonathan Gannon talked on Tuesday, I was the only Arizona media member there, so there was some pockets where other media members could come up and ask various questions and to get just a coach to answer something. And somebody decided to ask Jonathan Gannon about body mass index, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, I wonder what kind of response this is going to be. That's really kind of out there. it looked like Jonathan Gannon loved answering this question. It's a very important topic to him, body mass index, and where his players land on these things.
Is the guy who's working out at 5 a.m, okay, and does like that cold tub plunge after his workouts. And if you've been around him, like, he won't eat carbs, bread.
No.
So I'm not shocked at that one.
No,
based on his lifestyle.
And to make a long story short, I mean, they make sure, the Cardinals make sure that all the positions are in a certain range. He did say, like, there can be outliers, and they'll talk about certain circumstances with players, but for the most part, they expect their players to be within this range. And I just thought it was interesting. He talked all about this kind of matter-of-factly, and at the very end, he goes, I don't like overweight players. And the way he said it, I'm like, I don't think I'd want to be an overweight player if Jonathan Gannon was my coach.
There's different philosophies. When I was in Dallas at one point, there was a defensive coach who preferred kind of those beefy defensive linemen. The thought was, okay, I don't need you to be super fast or athletic per se. I just need you to clog the gaps. When you look at Arizona's defensive line room, though, they're pretty trim, all things considered. A lot of them are built pretty broad, or they're tall. And yes, they are going to be the bigger players, which obviously they're in the trenches. They're pretty fit, though, for a defensive line room.
No, you're right. There's no, like, Vince Wilfork in there, that kind of guy. You're right. No, that's interesting. By the way, BMI would have asked him about Isaiah Adams. How much weight does Isaiah Adams put on, Coach, in the offseason?
You're not supposed to ask people about their weight, Paul.
It better be good weight.
By the way, what about the whole speed receiver thing? I saw one synopsis of what Jonathan Gannon told the media at the breakfast table, that he supposedly, quote, hinted at adding a receiver by the time the offseason is over. Did you get that vibe from the head coach that a receiver is coming?
I'd be curious to know who said that. Would you
throw him under the bus, Paul?
I just Googled up real quick I was actually looking for something from you, and on Twitter I Googled up and I saw a series of tweets from different NFL media providers, and someone put
now,
that.
Again,
wait, on Twitter you Googled it?
Yeah. Searched it on.
I'm just making sure I was following.
I hear the laughing in there. What do you want me to do? I search functioned on Twitter.
I will say, Gannon.
By the way, there was this business forecaster. I listened to too much of this stuff. There was a business forecaster who likened Google to being the next Kodak.
Like go out of business?
It's going out of business and is going to be outdated in a lickety split because of ChatGPT and the other DeepSeek and other AI that's coming.
Anti-AI.
So I've been asking all the young people around and the teenagers that come parading through my house about whether they've stopped using Google or not, and they're like, absolutely not. But I thought that was an outrageous, inflammatory statement to liken Google to Eastman Kodak.
Well, here's part of the problem with Google, though. Part of the problem is people have figured out how to game the system, and so when you search stuff, it's getting harder and harder to really find what you're looking for because people have figured out how to game it. So I think that's part of the problem. But anyways,
where were we?
I have no freaking idea now.
Receiver.
Receiver.
Did you get the vibe?
I would love to know. Well, what I was going to say is, at the owners' meetings, it's not like the coaches and GMs are walking around. It's possible. I don't know who tweeted that out, because if it was a national guy, I could see potentially him stopping to talk to a national guy at some point, and that got brought up. If it's somebody who would have been at the table, and by the way, there was nobody at the table besides me from Arizona, so I'm just saying, if you find something on Twitter or elsewhere about what Jonathan Gannon said at the owners' meetings from an Arizona reporter,
it's grand theft content?
Yes.
Drop the mic.
Anyways, so here's what I brought up the speed receiver stuff. I don't know if he was talking about just receiver. When I brought up speed receiver to both, now Monty, I had him one-on-one. When I brought up Gannon to the receiver thing, look, I don't think they're going to turn down a guy who's got speed that can do these things. But what did Jonathan Gannon say to me when I asked him about a speed receiver? The first words out of his mouth are the same thing he says every time he gets a receiver question gets brought up to him. He's got to be able to get open and catch the ball. And then it's, block. And can he run after the catch? And Monty gave me the sense that speed itself, like how many times you're going to need that per game that you're going to actually use it, where you'd actually throw it to them? 4, 5 maximum? And if they can't do all these other things, I don't know. I got struck by that answer and the fact that Jonathan Gannon sounded a lot more upbeat about what Zay Jones could give them than you would think. And I know I brought this up on the podcast before, but like for the people saying, well, why not Amani Cooper? I'm telling you right now, I could totally see this front office and coaching staff saying, why do we need Amari Cooper? We've got somebody like Zay Jones.
It makes sense. I think there's also question marks. Do you have that speedy receiver in Tajon Palmer, Xavier Weaver from last year who didn't see the field? I love the idea of having a speedy receiver. We all have. We've talked about that on the podcast of having somebody stretch the field. You have to start thinking, though, especially if it's going to be someone where you're going to have to give, right, a good amount of money to, how often are they going to get targets when you've got Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson? You've got Trey McBride. You use James Conner out of the backfield. If they want to use Zay Jones a little bit more, maybe it's possible that the Cardinals value a little bit more the qualities that they have in the players rather than just someone like a Tyreek Hill.
Day 3. If they take a speed receiver, it'll be day 3 in the draft. For everything you just said.
Yeah.
I don't think they attach enough value or they'll get enough use out of a speed receiver to take him on day 1 or day 2. And they might already have that guy on the roster in Xavier Weaver. The problem is if you're going to have that guy who has that sort of specific and limited role, you better be able to play all the teams. And like Xavier Weaver, for example, doesn't exactly have a spot on teams.
And again, that's the issue that you have.
So, okay. All right. Well, guess what? It's never a bad time to introduce winning behavior.
I see you. Let's go.
Can you display winning behavior? You have to consistently display winning behavior.
That's winning behavior.
You got to define what winning behavior is and hold people to that standard.
Yes.
All right. I love this. Arm length measurements got all jacked up.
Oh.
Are you sure it's just the arm length? Because my favorite moment so far of the offseason player evaluation process is Cam Ward, potentially the number 1 pick overall, who went from like 8 3/4 of a hand size to 9 3/8 from the Senior Bowl to the Combine.
He had a growth spurt.
I do think the measurements got jacked up. It's been clear because it kind of got big with Will Campbell, the LSU tackle.
Yeah.
And
it's costing them potentially a lot of money.
Well, not anymore because they're realizing that as these guys do the pro days and they're getting remeasured by NFL people that the numbers of the Combine were wrong. I don't know who it was, and I don't know what, but supposedly the rumor that I saw going around was that whatever the NFL scout was or the NFL dude who was doing those measurements at the Combine messed it up. And at some point, somebody actually said, I don't think you're doing that right, and he refused to listen to him. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but all I know is all these linemen, all their arm length issues, there's been issues there. So that's not winning behavior, Paul.
Maybe he was doing it in the metric system, and it didn't, compute. I'm not exact. All right. You know what? I think we need some performance broadcasting.
Yes.
And no one does it better these days than Kyle Brandt, Good Morning Football. Here's what he had to say about after taking a look at the coach's picture, which is an annual thing, right?
Yes.
At the owners'
Every
meetings.
year, all the coaches get together for a group photo, and they all look like they love it.
Okay, Kyle Brandt on JG.
The Go With What Works Award. I love this. This guy's becoming a fixture in the segment. Of all people, Jonathan Gannon. Go down to JG in the bottom left corner. He knows what he likes. He likes a tight-fitting polo into the khakis, and check out JG stunting on him with the sockless loafers. Gannon, you dog. I like it. That is a cool look. He has worn the same outfit pretty much every time. Tight polo, sockless loafers. I like that he goes, but he's looking around. He's like, listen, I doubled our win total this year. What did you guys do? I'll wear whatever the hell I want, and I'll be back next year.
And if you see the video, Kyle Brandt's out of his seat, and it's he gets an Emmy every time he busts into that. Pretty much.
That's a
How
quality.
come the two of you both wear socks with your loafers?
I think that
foot
goes.
odor?
Oh, that's a good enough reason.
I mean, why else wouldn't you wear socks?
Ask JG.
I got good socks.
Maybe he wears no-show socks. Do they make those for men?
I got the quality socks.
Oh, no.
You know, they make those for women, like a no-show sock. Do they make those for men?
They do.
Maybe that's what he
I
wears.
wear them once in a while. And that's possible. I think that should be a Cardinals overtime, Danny.
We get to the bottom of the sock debacle.
Well, I mean, not necessarily the sock debacle, but like JG's style.
Okay.
Darren's socks are way too fashionable
Whether he has any tattoos or anything.
To attend and cover a press conference thrown by the now Sacramento A's. They held it in what is the equivalent of a tool shed. Did you see the picture of this?
I did.
Is there anything? Is there any better way to convey to the media you don't matter than we're going to stuff you into a tool shed and then go ahead and you can roll cameras?
According to the A's, who does matter? I mean, the fans, the players.
I mean that's part of the thing is like if they were in a tool shed and they were playing still in a major league stadium, that would be kind of. Ugh. But like, it reminds me one of my all-time favorite stories is. Back in the Sun Devil Stadium days, you would go there was a press conference room. The Cardinals weren't using the ASU locker room stuff.
Correct.
So they had to use extra locker rooms on the other side of the stadium. And there was a press conference room for the Cardinals, but for visiting teams, they set up a tent outside with a podium. The final game of the 2004 season, Darnell Dockett had an interception in that game. I think the Cardinals beat the Buccaneers like 9-6, something like that. I can't even remember why I was in there, but I ended up going to try and get some quotes from John Gruden. Oh, no, I didn't go in for John. I heard about this. That's what it was. I heard about it later. So one of my good friends was covering the Buccaneers. His name was Chris Harry. And and after John Gruden talked, we get back in the old school press box at Sun Devil Stadium. You had to take an elevator all the way up, and they were super slow, and it was like up to like just below heaven. It went all the way up just below heaven. So like you had this long elevator rise, but we're waiting down there to go up on the elevators, and Chris Harry goes, that was unbelievable. I'm like, what happened? And Chris Harry's like, we're sitting there, and there was like an air conditioner or something blowing in there, so you could barely hear the coach if you were down off the podium. So all these reporters would get up on the podium with the coach so they could freaking hear him talk. And it was tight, and it was hard to tell. And Chris Harry's like, I'm up there, and this guy like grabbed me, and I'm trying to get him off me, and I'm like, what are you doing, dude? And then we like nearly threw down, and we fall off this podium, and John Gruden apparently paused, and he's like, what is going on around here? In the middle of his press conference, John Gruden, what is going on around here? And I'm hearing the story. I'm like, that's incredible. We get up to the press box, and I pass Bob Hune, the longtime radio guy, AP guy. I'm like, hey, Bob. And he goes, I'm in John Gruden's press conference, and I get up on the podium, and I start to slip, and I accidentally had to grab this guy from Tampa Bay, and he got angry at me, and he thought I was trying to pull him over, and we almost had a fight. And I'm like, oh, my God, I know both the guys that were in the middle of this thing.
So the Oakland A's not winning behavior.
Not winning.
And you know, it's probably an upgrade from the Oakland Coliseum, whatever they have going at Sacramento.
But I don't want to blame anybody for not winning, Paul, because I was not winning.
Yeah.
Recently.
Okay. How so?
The last 3 days.
Okay.
Got on a plane to go to the owners' meetings on Sunday morning. I don't know why, but my flights were super early and got in super late. So my flight left at 5:50. I had like what was supposed to be a 3.5 hour layover in Nashville turned into 4.5 hours because of a delay.
Wow.
But I'm sitting in Nashville for about an hour watching something on one of the streaming services trying to pass the time, and my phone dings, and it's my wife. And the text read, your computer is here. Did you need that?
That's good.
As I'm waiting to get my second leg of my flight to the owners' meetings where I'm going to be writing constantly for 2 days.
See, my wife would have texted, you didn't take your computer. Are you sure you're on a business trip?
I will say that I think she was trying to let me down early, but I'm going to tell you right now, when you're about to head out to some place where you need your computer all the time and you don't have it and there's nothing you can do about it, and it's a Sunday, and you're not going to get it overnighted because, number one, they weren't going to send it out until Monday, and it wouldn't come till Tuesday, and I was already going to be on the way back. And I'm like, so let me tell you something. The Darren Urban of 10 years ago would have had problems recovering from that, but I'm a new, better Darren Urban.
Really? Okay.
And recovered.
Let this story serve as evidence for all those doubters, haters, and those who are dubious.
I made it work with a lot of help from back here from Craig Relu and Caitlin Epps, and with my help from my good friend Darren Gant, who is, for lack of a better term, Panthers chatter for the Carolina Panthers. He's been a good friend of mine. He let me use his computer for a bit. And so did the PR guy for the Panthers. He lent me his computer.
Carolina Panthers winning behavior.
But I had to use my my iPad. And let me tell you something. On top of everything, the Calais Campbell story broke while I was on one of my flights home. So I'm trying to put that story together on my iPad with airplane internet. That was fun. So generally, I'm going to say Darren Urban forgetting computer at home, not winning behavior.
Well, Carolina's coming to town this year, so you better do something nice for your besties with the Carolina Panthers.
Anyways.
So it's good. Okay, Dani, do you have any struggles, challenges that any grievances you need to air over there?
Never.
That's good.
Well, we haven't had our sit down for our review yet. That's next week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
She'll have grievances with me.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I think I just say this from a self-serving vantage point, and I'll leave you this final thought. I worked hard behind the scenes to eliminate the chain gang because I'm sick and tired of 20 years of standing behind those guys on the sidelines. So no one is happier that they're ushering in and actually embracing technology and spotting a football by using the camera-based tech that we have available out there. So boom, whatever it took, I'm glad they made it happen. And the chain gang, please go stand over by the Gatorade bucket.
Is that not contributing to the demise of Google?
Perhaps, and I don't care.
Do you do realize, I believe the owners' meetings are here next year. Are you guys all going to attend now? You don't have to.
Do I have to commit right now?
Probably not. We probably have some time.
No, knowing the NFL, we probably have to put on a credential request already. So at this point, yeah, possibly. Okay, all right. Look, I'm still smiling. Doesn't matter. Darren can bring us down with some of his stories over there, but the Cardinals signed Calais Campbell, so I'm still
winning behavior.
Exactly, in a very good mood on that front. And that'll do it for this edition of Cardinals Underground, brought to you by Pacific Office Automation.